Hello and welcome to today's meeting for our Evidence for Quality Improvement Q Exchange project. Thank you to all of you so much for taking the time out of your diaries to join the meeting. We hope that you'll find it a really good, valuable and fun use of your time. My name is Andrea Gibbons. I'm the lead for the Evidence for Quality Improvement project. I've spent 20 years working in improvement in some guise or another, working in the NHS for the last 8 years. Just before we move on, we're using Microsoft Teams today, and many of you will be much more familiar with this than I am, as we don't use it in our trust. However, two key areas of functionality that I encourage you to take full use of during the call today. Firstly, the hands up button. So if you wish to raise your hand, please do, and we would welcome your involvement in the call. You can also use this if you're having any issues. Secondly, the chat functionality. Again, we'd encourage you to use this throughout the call to engage, collaborate and share with your colleagues. Also, obviously, if there are any issues technically in terms of sound quality or video quality, please do also comment on them in the chat box and we can investigate for you. Without further ado, let's move on to discuss the project. The purpose of today's meeting is to welcome you to the Evidence for Quality Improvement project and give you enough information to decide whether you'd like to continue to be involved in the project going forwards. We'll share with you the story of the project, the problem we're trying to face and how we're hoping to tackle that challenge. We're also hoping that we will be able to create a community of like-minded people who share a common passion and purpose. This will give us all the opportunities to build and extend our networks and hopefully make some new friends. Thirdly and finally, I'm hoping that we will be able to share with you some of the work that we've done so far and start to think about how we can take the project forward working together. So let's go back a few years and consider the history and origins of this project. I started in the NHS 8.5 years ago, and my first port of call when I joined my trust was visiting our library service. The team there were fabulous in helping me get up to speed with the different environment that I found myself in, and I discovered a very untapped resource that I found incredibly valuable and continue to truly treasure in all the work that I do. I worked in improvement, and for each and every new improvement project, I found myself knocking on the door of the library service, asking for their help and support to research what best practice was for the project that I was tackling at that particular point. The team were incredible in coming back to me with evidence-based suggestions, feedback, examples of what had and hadn't worked elsewhere, and ideas for concepts that we might want to consider. I found this phenomenally useful and shared my experience as we developed our improvement capability. By offering some of this service myself, working in partnership with the library service, the improvement team, as it grew, valued this evidence-based research more and more, to such an extent that in 2017 we secured funding for a full-time embedded improvement librarian role, reporting into myself and to the manager of the library service. That role was a phenomenal success, and in 2019 we won awards with the Institute of Continuous Improvement in Public Service and the Health Service Journal. We were runner-up. As a consequence of the growing interest in the role, when the Q Exchange Awards were announced, I submitted an idea for evidence-based improvements. I used the hashtag evidence-based QI, putting our heads together to show how I hoped that we could all work together to truly harness the power of evidence for our improvement community. I was overwhelmed by the level of energy and excitement and the involvement and conversations that emerged from this idea. And we had more than 50 comments from people, in many cases, that I had never met, offering their help and passing on ideas, suggestions, and of course their support. In November, the project was announced as one of the winners of the Q Exchange funding, and we received £30,000 in January for this particular piece of work. And that takes us to today. Today, we are hoping that you will come on board with the project to help us make this vision a reality. Only through working with you can we truly harness the power of knowledge, evidence, and best practice and connect our QI community with the tremendous wealth of resources that are available to them. So, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? We described it as follows. QI teams do not routinely find and use evidence in improvement projects. When they look for it, they get overwhelmed with too much information of various types and quality and struggle to find what they need in a format that they can use. As a result, they repeat mistakes, work less efficiently, make uninformed decisions, and reinvent the wheel. Naturally, when framing our problem, we looked to see what the literature said. We found this AHSN report on NHS research and innovation priorities from May 2019. The first quote describes how evidence can help overcome the barriers and resistance to change. An STP Director of Strategy states, "But when we can show it's born out of national, local, international research, where there's a focus on how this will bring new and better practice into play, then some of the resistance or reluctance to engage in that is pushed away." This second quote talks about the value of looking elsewhere and seeking evidence beyond the immediate locality. This CCG Director of Strategy states, "The other thing, and this is probably not unique to us in Devon, accessing other people's evidence base, that you don't have to create your own local one. So I'm sure you have this in other, it's like, well, yes, that works in Glasgow, but it couldn't possibly work here. Yes, it can, because we have the same issues of rurality or deprivation." We also found this article from 2005, which describes the state of evidence-based quality improvement. I'll read from the abstract. "Routine practice fails to incorporate research evidence in a timely and reliable fashion. Many quality improvement efforts aim to close these gaps between clinical research and practice. However, in sharp contrast to the paradigm of evidence-based medicine, these efforts often proceed on the basis of intuition and anecdotal accounts of successful strategies for changing provider behaviour or achieving organisational change." So clearly there's an opportunity to build the connection and the bridge between evidence and quality improvement projects. And that takes us on to the aim for the Evidence for Quality Improvement projects. And this is the aim that we developed when conceiving the project. And we'd welcome your input and thoughts into shaping this for the next stage of the project. So the aim that we came up with was, our aim is to support the QI community to better use evidence in improvement projects. As I say, we'd be very grateful for your thoughts and comments, and I'm sure that's something that we will be discussing going forward. It's very easy for me to say how incredibly useful I've found evidence in working on my own improvement projects, so I wouldn't blame you for being a little bit cynical. So I'd like to share this video with you, which is from some of my colleagues who are talking here about the role of evidence and how evidence has helped them in their improvement projects.
It made a big difference with the weight management project. I'm working with the team and the University College of London designing an app. We wanted the app to help triage patients, as at the present time they were seeing every health professional, which they didn't need to do. That design was too simple for the University College of London, so I asked Roxanne to come and do some research. She brought sort of options for the questions, layout, how it would look, extra functionality with regards to sending and receiving information. Also collecting patient information about basic health, their moods, and these could actually feed into the interventions with dietitians and psychologists as well to help add more value, instead of just being conversations. So as well as hopefully reducing the weight for the patient, which we wanted the app to do, it will also add extra value for the patient during their visits.
A lot of our inpatient projects make use of what other trusts have already done, so we turn straight to Roxanne to look into any ideas. Roxanne has a crucial understanding of the improvement methodology, so we know she can cut through all the noise to get the best of what's out there, saving us a lot of time. Recently we heard of another trust using placemats to prompt patients to take ownership of their discharge process. Roxanne's research provided some compelling statistics around reduction in patient complaints and increased satisfaction, but also found examples of how this could be used elsewhere, examples supporting meal times or prompting patients with their therapy goals, allowing us to think wider about spreading a really simple but effective idea right across the trust.
So from my perspective, the evidence-based team has made a huge impact. We've been working on the theatre's new build project, which is an £80 million investment. So we're really keen to make sure that we had the right evidence to create decisions as to whether we went with medi-rooms, recovery rooms. The team themselves are sort of flip-flop between a decision. There was a little bit of evidence out there, but the fact that Roxanne was able to come back with information enabled them to pick the right solution, really.
I've used the evidence team a lot in a variety of areas. So our large project, which is listening and responding to care homes, discharge to assess, safety huddles, senior medical reviews, they're just some examples. And I think what the evidence team brings is credibility, that we're looking at best evidence and best practice. I think it helps confidence, because they're then starting from a really good starting point to then go out on a limb and change. I think using the evidence team helps inspires and motivate, because then they see the art of the possible. And I think it brings ideas for us to adopt and adapt.
The research that the evidence team provided helped inform the planning of the new critical care outdoor space, improving patient wellbeing and recovery.
So from my point of view, the most impactful difference the evidence team has made is around giving me information about evidence-based strategies for training. So we've been trying to roll out quality improvement methodology training across 2 organisations, and the evidence team has shown me how best to mobilise that training.
As a result of this evidence-based approach to training, we've been asked by other organisations in the county and the region to help them deliver similar training.
I hope that you enjoyed that video, and I hope that it has convinced you of the value that you personally can add to your QI teams. You can influence the decisions that QI teams are making. You can influence the outcomes of those improvement projects. So I really encourage you to build those relationships and develop the services that you're offering for your QI teams. You are absolutely the key to enabling them to tap into the wealth of knowledge and evidence that is out there that can help their projects be even more successful. I know that many of you will have been involved in similar projects or similar initiatives to try and connect QI teams with library services. So let me talk to you about how we envisaged this happening as part of this project. I should point out this isn't a done deal, it's simply a structure to guide our conversations that we will refine working together with yourselves and with the representatives from the Q community who want to be involved in this project. So our driver diagram is split into two. One is around supporting QI teams, the second is around supporting LKS people, that is you. So for the QI teams, our key objective really is to create the appetite amongst QI people and projects to find, use and share evidence for QI. And you'll note there it's not simply about accessing information, it's also about producing information and sharing what's worked and what hasn't worked. So how do we want to do that? Well, we need to convince QI teams of the benefits of doing it. And that might be through blogs, it might be through publications. Originally, pre-COVID, we'd hoped that we would be attending conferences and events at different trusts and nationally. We also want to produce materials that you can share with them to help encourage them to use and share evidence. We want to understand how they currently use and share best practice, if indeed they do. What resources do they use? Where do they go? We want to upskill QI teams in how to share learning, that is writing their work up, be it on the Academy of Fabulous stuff or as a more formal article. And then we want to help them and motivate them to do it. And finally, we want to create the virtual community, which you are part of, which is a joint community between LKS and QI teams. Moving on to how we want to support you, emphasising again that this is very much something that I'd like to refine together with you. We want to support you to identify and share evidence for QI and build your relationships with your QI teams. We talked about the community, so creating the virtual community of LKS and QI people is a first step. We want to create tools and resources to help you find evidence for your QI teams. I should point out that resources and evidence sources for QI tend to be quite different to those that you might use for a clinical literature search. We've created Twitter lists of library teams, of QI people, of librarians. So we want to help connect you and allow you to engage in the wider community. We know that some of you will want to invest in your own QI evidence librarian or an equivalent role, be it part-time, full-time or a bit of a time. And we want to help create that business case. So we'll be trying to provide you with some of the evidence that you need, should that be something that you wish to explore. And we want to help upskill you in QI. So we're hoping to develop some online learning for you in QI for those of you who think that you might benefit from doing that. So far during this call, we've talked about the story and background of the Evidence for Quality Improvement project. We've talked about the problem that we're trying to tackle with the project, the aim of the project, and we've talked about how we're hoping to achieve that aim. So now for something a little different. This video is designed for quality improvement teams to encourage them to use and ask for evidence in their improvement projects. Only 2 people have seen it, so I would really welcome your thoughts, feedback and suggestions. The idea of this video is that you can share it with your teams and that we can use it on social media to start the conversation around using evidence for improvement. Enjoy. I hope that you enjoyed watching that video as much as we enjoyed creating it. Before moving on, I would just like to share with you the Evidence for Quality Improvement, that is E4QI, Pinterest page that we've produced. This is a resource that's available to QI teams and library services teams freely and online. You don't need a Pinterest account to access any of the content. On the page, we have a number of subdivisions around different areas of interest. So, for example, we have pages for videos, training, QI guides, evidence, virtual working, knowledge management, measurement, and many others. We've also got information around the project there so that you can see some of the things that we've been up to and the documents that we've produced and discussed. Please do take a few minutes to explore the resource. I do hope you'll find it useful. If you follow the page as a Pinterest user, then we can add you to the collaborators on the page, which means that you will be able to add to the pages as you find useful resources going forward so that others can freely access them. We've covered a lot of content in this session, so I'll quickly recap on the key points. Firstly, we shared the story of the Evidence for Quality Improvement project. It was born out of a close working relationship between the improvement and library teams in Somerset and the improvement librarian role that we created in 2017. In November 2019, the project won funding from the Q community. We then discussed the problem that the project is trying to tackle, the fact that QI teams don't routinely use evidence in improvement projects, and the aim of the project, which is to connect QI teams with the evidence that they need for their projects. We then discussed the approach that we're taking, the key primary drivers to achieving that aim, namely supporting QI teams and supporting library and knowledge services teams. I shared with you two videos, one from Somerset where improvement advisors and project managers shared their experiences of using evidence in their improvement projects. The second video was designed for quality improvement teams to encourage them to use evidence in their projects. Finally, I shared with you the Pinterest board that contains a wealth of resources for both quality improvement teams and library teams. So in summary, knowledge is of no use unless you put it into practice, and that's what this project is all about, putting the evidence that's available to quality improvement teams into practice by supporting them to access and use evidence. And I do hope that you will join the team and work with us to achieve our project aim. Thank you so much, and now we'll move on to a broader discussion.